It's 5:30 in the morning. The sun is just beginning to rise, and the mist along the roadside has not completely disappeared. One by one, three-wheeled vehicles, motorcycles, and small trucks emerge from the nearby villages, all heading in the same direction. Some are carrying vegetables picked fresh from the fields. Others are bringing live chickens and baskets of eggs. A quiet country road, usually almost empty, is slowly transforming into a huge open-air marketplace. Today, we're going to experience a tradition that has been part of rural Chinese life for generations, going to the country market. In Chinese, this is called ganji. These markets are usually not held every day. In many places, they take place once every 5 days, often following dates on the traditional lunar calendar. Local people don't need to check their phones. Older villagers, in particular, have known the market dates for most of their lives. For them, the schedule has simply become part of the rhythm of everyday life. Many vendors also travel from market to market. They set up their stalls here today, pack everything away in the afternoon, and then travel dozens of miles to another town the next day. For them, the county and its surrounding towns form a constantly rotating map of rural markets. Some people come here specifically to shop. Others come simply to enjoy a hot breakfast. For the villagers who live nearby, going to the market is about much more than buying things. It feels more like a small festival that returns every few days. You might run into an old friend you haven't seen in years. You may also meet a former classmate, a distant relative, or someone you know from the neighboring village. The vegetables here do not always look as neat and uniform as the ones you might find in a supermarket. That's because many of them were picked from the vendor's own fields earlier that same morning. For some of these elderly sellers, this is not really a business in the modern sense. They don't own a store, they don't have a brand. They may simply have more vegetables than their family can eat, so they load them onto a three-wheeled vehicle and bring them to the market, hoping to earn a few dozen yuan. They don't calculate labor costs. They don't calculate transportation expenses. When someone asks for the price, the vendor picks up a plastic bag and slowly begins filling it. Each transaction is small, but it remains one of the most authentic parts of the rural Chinese economy. Prices at these markets are not always fixed. You can begin by asking, "How much is this?" After the vendor gives a price, some customers will naturally begin to bargain. "Can you make it a little cheaper? I'm buying a lot. Can you give me 2 more?" This bargaining does not necessarily mean that either side truly cares about saving 1 or 2 yuan. It is also a form of social interaction. The vendor pretends the request is impossible. The customer pretends to walk away. Finally, the vendor smiles, adds another handful of green onions to the bag, and the deal is done. What is especially interesting is that although the market looks very traditional, the payment methods can be surprisingly modern. A faded QR code hangs from almost every vendor's cart. A woman in her 70s may not know how to use many smartphone features, but after a customer scans the code, she listens carefully for the payment notification. And so, in the same market, you can hear 2 very different sounds. One is the shouting of vendors, a sound that has existed here for generations. The other comes from a smartphone. WeChat Pay received 10 yuan. This may be one of the most distinctive scenes in rural China today. Tradition has not completely disappeared, but modern technology has not completely replaced it either. The two exist side by side, crowded together on the same street. The products sold here are difficult to find together in a modern city shopping mall. Hose, shovels, sickles, ropes, water pipes, mouse traps, pot lids, plastic buckets, kitchen knives, electrical wires, and all kinds of small parts whose purpose you may not even recognize. Some of these products may have been sitting here for years, their packaging faded by the sun. In the city, consumers often pay attention to design, branding and packaging. But people here are more interested in a few practical questions. Is it strong? How many years will this plastic basin last? Is this kitchen knife sharp enough? Products here rarely need an elaborate story. They simply need to solve a real problem. The clothes sold at the market are usually not the latest fashion. Very few carry famous brand names. Jackets and shirts hang from temporary metal racks. Shoes are placed directly on plastic sheets spread across the ground. There are no fitting rooms. A customer may simply put a jacket on over their own clothes, turn around, and ask the people beside them whether it looks right. Buying shoes is just as simple. You sit on a small stool, try on a pair, stand up, and walk a few steps. At a market like this, people's expectations are very practical. Low prices, durability, and comfort for physical work matter much more than the name of a brand. For many elderly people living in the countryside, a jacket costing only a few dozen yuan may be worn through several winters. The market offers more than physical products. In one corner, you may find someone repairing shoes, sharpening knives, fixing farming tools, or cutting replacement keys. In the city, these services are spread across many different shops, but at a rural market, they are all gathered together along the same street. You may also notice that there are not many young people here. Many young adults from rural China have moved to county seats or much larger cities in search of work. The people who remain in the villages are often the elderly and children. In this sense, the rural market is also a mirror. On the surface, it is crowded and lively, filled with people, food, and the calls of vendors. Some elderly villagers still prefer to use cash. They keep their money in an inside pocket and carefully count the notes one by one when they make a purchase. Their children may be working hundreds of miles away in a city. Their grandchildren may be walking beside them, scrolling through short videos on a smartphone while accompanying their grandparents to the market. 3 generations are living in completely different worlds. Yet on market day, they appear together in the same scene. Rural China today is no longer disconnected from the internet. Packages can be delivered to small towns, and many villages now have local pickup stations. Some farmers even sell their fruit and agricultural products to customers across the country through live streaming. From the perspective of efficiency, online shopping may be far more convenient than visiting a traditional market. But these markets have not disappeared, because people do not come here only to buy products. They want to see things with their own eyes. They want to touch them, examine them, and ask the price face to face. The internet can deliver a product directly to someone's front door, but it cannot easily replace human interaction. In modern China, high-speed trains travel between cities at more than 300 kilometers per hour. A payment can be completed on a phone in just a few seconds. A package can be delivered to a distant village. But beyond all of this technology, there are still people who wake up before sunrise and place freshly picked vegetables into a basket. There are still people who travel more than 10 kilometers on a 3-wheeled vehicle just to attend a market that lasts for half a day. There is no grand story here. There is only a bag of vegetables, a pair of cloth shoes, a bowl of hot soup, and an ordinary person trying to live an honest life. Perhaps that is what makes these rural markets so special. They may look like something from the past, but they are still very much a part of China today. The market sells products, but what it preserves is something much more valuable, the human connections that have not yet disappeared. That's all for today's video. I'm Echo. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Have you ever visited a market like this? Let me know in the comments below.